Anytime.
I don't make it.
Yeah. So, and thank you too for visiting with us tonight. And these are in our continuing series of stories of history in Seward County connected with the Tall Grass Prairie stories. And when we get done, they will be uploaded onto youtube.com so everybody will be able to enjoy them.
Lucky people. I don't even know YouTube.
This is going to be a great interview. Tonight it is June 1st of 2016, and we are visiting with Jean Kolterman and Marian Fosler of Seward County, Nebraska. And I'd like to first establish our ages, and how I'm going to do this is the youngest one go first here. Jean Kolterman, how old are you?
I am 86.
86 years old, from Seward, Nebraska. Marian?
And I'm 88, but I'm really just a year older than her.
There, it's just a technical.
It's the way it is. Her brother and I were in the same class.
Okay, all right. And we will go through here, and I'll ask some questions, and we're going to establish, and a lot of times, I go through and I'd like to establish your heritage, your lineage. I'd like to establish where you grew up and what you did before you two both became businesswomen downtown in Seward, Nebraska. Jean, where were you born and raised?
I was born out on Waverly Road, actually is what it's called now. And I was raised, I was there till I was about 5 or so. And then we moved into town. And we lived right now where the Faith Lutheran Church is.
Oh, you did when you were a little girl?
When I was a little girl.
Okay. What did your dad do?
My dad was a farmer, and then he moved into town, and he was the county supervisor. I don't know what that meant. It's something.
Okay.
He took men out on the road and took care of them.
Okay, all righty.
At that time, let's put it that way.
What nationality was your mom and dad? What is your heritage?
My heritage is German.
Okay.
Although my grandmother used to say we were Scotch-Irish, and I don't know where she ever got that. But.
Well, because a lot of folks here
Right.
in this county,
Well,
and I'm from Northeast Nebraska, and I'm a little Scotch-Irish.
actually, my daughter-in-law goes into genealogy, and she found out that we were Russian Jew.
Well, there you go.
So that's the Gleesburg.
We
We're
are-
the Gleesburg. That's,
Okay.
so that is.
What was your maiden name?
My maiden name
Uh-huh.
was Dierberger,
Uh-huh.
so that's German.
Yes.
But my mother's name was Gleesburg,
Okay.
and Polly Gleesburg just passed away.
That's right.
That was her. My mother and her husband were first cousins.
First cousin. Okay. That's good. We need to establish some of these lines. And then I'll go over and we'll ask Marian. Marian, where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born at the hospital here in Seward.
Okay.
Lived north of town on the Ramsey homestead till I was 9 months old. And then my dad and mother moved down on South 2nd Street, just across the bridge, about 80 acres that belonged to my great-grandfather. And he milked cows. He was a dairyman and farmed that.
Okay. All right. Because I know that your family has such a history in the dairy here.
Yeah.
In Seward. What did your dad do for a living?
He was a farmer and a
Dairy,
dairyman.
of course, we just established that, I'm sorry, there. And then what lineage?
Pretty much Scotch, Irish, a little French, a little Dutch. We're kind of a mixture. My forebears apparently were here before the United States was even found.
Really? No. So they
supposedly came, before.
but they came over lots earlier.
Very,
then.
very early, yes.
Because I know a lot of folks that came to Nebraska came from Pennsylvania and Ohio. So that, unless they immigrated directly from their homeland, a lot of folks came into Pennsylvania, Ohio first.
They
and
settled in the East Coast and then
Right.
traveled
then,
west and west.
Okay, and then we'll go back. I'd like to get a little bit of when you were children, when you were little girls in Seward, and you would go home from school. I'm gonna assume that you both went to the elementary school here in Seward, right? And then when you would go home for supper, what was your favorite? Can you remember a favorite meal? What was a good meal?
Well,
I know we had chicken a lot.
See, I've heard that before too. Fried chicken in the summertime
Fried
is
chicken
a
and
wonderful
mashed
meal.
potatoes and gravy.
And tomatoes, so,
yeah.
yes. And so, my family would make thin pancakes and roll them up with sugar. Also, they would have pancakes with brown sugar and cream on them. And
Sounds good.
Yeah, I wondered if you remembered anything special like that from your childhood.
No.
Okay.
Mom made French toast a lot,
Okay.
and cinnamon toast, that was a big
Cinnamon toast, yes, yes. And then we'll move forward here. And when you started dating and then you got married, can give me some, who did you marry?
I married Donald Carl Kolterman, and I worked at the Cattle National Bank. That's where I met, well, I didn't really meet him, he was a customer. And so, it was kind of nice to know your customer a little better. You know? And so, he called me and asked me for a date, and I actually thought I was dating somebody else. And when he came to the door, I was a little bit shocked, but I went anyway. But that was really funny.
What did he do at the time? What line of work did he do?
Well, he had just come out of the service, and so he was actually working with his father at the Ben Franklin store. And so that's how he became a partner of the Ben Franklin store. And
What year? About.
I don't know. I don't
Okay,
know.
okay.
It was, I want to say 45 is when he started there.
And that would be about right, that's when
Right.
he would have gotten home.
Yeah, because he was in Washington when everybody else, Washington State, when everybody else was getting out, you know, and then he was still
Okay,
up there helping the people, so.
okay,
And then he thought, well, that was before. Before he went to the service, his father was on the draft board, and he drafted his own son, and then he quit, because he said, I can't take this. So it was kind of sad. His father was a real gentleman, a real sweetheart, and his mother was too, but his father and I got along real, real well, so handsome man.
So, Don, your husband's dad was on the draft board right down here in Seward County.
Right.
Okay,
He was chairman of the draft board.
okay,
And Don was at Concordia.
okay.
And so then he was drafted, and then he went, and that took care of.
And so you weren't dating Don when he was overseas?
No.
Okay, he had gotten back,
He was back,
You had just gotten back?
and they had kind of a, I can't think what they call it, something like internship. I don't know too much about it, but it was something like he got paid from the government because he was serving in the service.
Okay,
And I remember he said that that was his, like if you go to school, then you get paid. Well, this way he got paid, serving as an assistant to
an
the.
apprentice, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, to that.
Mhm.
And so you folks, even before you were married, Don was connected with the Kolterman, with the Ben Franklin store, which was an institution on downtown, right? And then Marian, then where did you meet Dale and when?
He was a year ahead of me in high school, but we were the same age because he didn't go to kindergarten.
Okay,
And Seward was in a basketball tournament, which they thought they were going to be really, really good,
Uh-huh.
So we didn't go to the first game, which was away, and of course there was gas rationing, so one didn't get to go to every game. We were planning to go to the second game. Well, they lost the first game.
Oh, for
Aw.
pity's sake.
So, because we girls felt so badly, a friend of mine and decided they'd take us to see the Boston Globetrotters in Lincoln. It was our first date.
Oh my stars. So they rounded, and now, what was the connections because your friends felt so badly? Did they help you out with the gas rationing? Is that what
I
you?
suppose, well, they were both farm boys.
Oh, okay.
Bob Jerry was the farm boy.
Oh,
Yeah. And,
Okay.
yeah, so they had gas. And
Okay.
my dad was on the tire board.
On the
So,
which board?
tire rationing board. So Dale had to go to see him to get tires.
Oh, okay. Oh, I did not realize that. That's the first I've ever heard
Mhm.
that tires were rationed out
Oh,
too.
oh, we had tires and sugar
Sugar.
and flour and everything was rationed, and you had to have stamps to buy it.
Okay.
It was, people would hoard it, they would get other people that knew they weren't using their stamps, and they'd go and get that
Okay.
sugar or whatever, and especially when it was baking time,
Oh, yeah.
they would help you with your stamps and everything, so you could buy enough flour and sugar to go ahead and bake.
Okay.
But there was a lot of rationing, gasoline
Oh, yeah.
and flour, sugar, I can't.
I can't remember what else, but it was,
I know flour and sugar were, and tires and gasoline.
Things just didn't come easy.
no.
No,
What year about was that?
That was in 45, the spring of 45.
So then that was just right after World War
Yeah,
II.
and Dale
also.
graduated in May of that year,
Okay.
and he got a deferment for just a few months because he was the son of a farmer. His
Uh-huh.
dad was in bad health, and so he was needed to get the
He was
crops
being
in.
quiet.
And by the time that he was old enough and would have been drafted, the war was over. And he had always, all his life, felt guilty that he didn't serve. But
It's just the way it felt.
it was the way it was.
Yeah, yeah. And what did Dale do for a living?
He was a farmer.
He was a farmer.
Always.
And can you tell me what direction your farm is from Seward?
Up southeast,
Southeast of
about
Seward?
halfway between here and Milford. And I live on the Fosler homestead, which was homesteaded in 1879. The original fence, it's a new house, thank God. But, they've been farming there.
It was a homestead?
Mhm.
Was it part of the
They
homestead
actually
act?
bought the land from the railroad
From the railroad?
for about $8 an acre.
Oh my
you had a
gosh.
lot of that, they would buy it wherever the railroad would be. And they-
Because the railroad was allowed, so every other
Mhm.
section was railroad. And so when they had used what they wanted, then they would sell.
They would sell it off to the
And Dale's
people, the
grandfather
landowners.
had a large family, 7 kids, and he started with this 80 acres. And by the time each of one of them married, he had an 80 acres right there, contingent or in the neighborhood.
For
So the
each-
whole neighborhood was Foslers.
Wow, okay, well that's very interesting. And so then you and Dale, you started and you did wind up on the home place
And then I taught country school for 2 years.
for 2 years also. When did you open your fabric shop in town?
About 70.
Okay,
And I started there, a friend of mine, a church friend of mine, had opened a shop, she and her daughter, and they needed someone to teach sewing classes, and I had been taking some special sewing classes, some special clothing construction, that sort of thing. And so they asked me to do that, so I would come and teach a class, and then at that time, Dale and I were driving the school bus for Seward. He drive mornings and I drive afternoons.
okay. How many children did you folks have?
5.
5 children. Jane?
I have 4.
4.
Got speed.
Yeah.
I want to tell you something though, Marian's mother and my mother were classmates
Yes.
in the class of 21, and they both taught.
Mhm.
And Marian,
And married local people.
in country
So you have
stores.
such a history, don't you? You have such a history. What was your maiden name?
Ramsey.
Of course.
Ramsey.
Yes, I'm repeating myself.
See, as soon as I got my driver's license, I delivered milk around town, door to door, in glass bottles. I drove a little.
How old were you?
16.
16.
She had to
Okay.
drive.
And Nancy, who was just very little, she's lots younger than me, would ride along. We came up to a stop sign, and it was one of those where you really couldn't see very well, and I said, well, Nancy, are there any cars coming? And I started to pull out. And she said, but there's a great big truck.
Oh. So, what time of day did you deliver milk? What was your milk hour?
Oh, not terribly early. Dad would get up and they milk cows at 5, and then I would try to go about 7:30 or 8. I didn't do it during the school year.
Okay, and you would deliver fresh milk, door to
And
door?
cream, oh yeah.
And
if-
cream?
Yeah, and you just go in,
You had
a lot
bottles.
of glass bottles, you'd go in and look in the refrigerator to a lot of places and see what they needed and then put it in.
You would just go in the side door, the back door?
Well, you could, they did that a lot. They would just go in and walk into your house and they would say, oh, well, let's see, you need so much milk, and then
Or
would-
they'd leave a note sticking up in the bottle.
Okay.
Please leave a pint of cream and 2 quarts of milk.
Right.
And if nobody, if they hadn't left you a note, you would just go to check anyway for it, take care of it?
Or if someone wasn't home, of course, you would put the milk in the refrigerator.
You were a lot safer, they felt, those days. I mean, you had no problem.
We didn't worry about things.
No.
That's, oh, that's
We didn't even lock our doors.
nice.
No.
I still am.
Well, I do.
So then we'll go back over here to Jean, to your story. And so I imagine, what year did you and Don get married?
In 49.
In 49, I was guessing about 50. And so then, did you work in the store right away, or did you you raised your family first, I bet you?
No, I stayed at home, pretty
Mhm.
much. We had twins. And, but Don always loved to say, oh, we have 2 in 18 months, But anyway, we had the twin boys, and then 3 years later we had a girl, and then we had 3 years later we had another boy. So in the meantime, he was working at the store, and he would take me occasionally on buying trips. I always say buying trips.
Uh-huh.
So we had a lot of fun going out and buying the merchandise. Excuse me.
Was
And in
it,
fact, I was in competition with Marian.
Oh, yes.
that's
Friendly.
right.
Friendly.
That's right, I can remember when Ben Franklin's had fabric. That's right. Going back, was it when your father-in-law had it, was it always called the Ben Franklin
No.
store?
No. It was called the racket store, for one thing, because excuse me, he would take a basket, or he would take a pan and hand it to the ladies as they came in. We always said he was the first one to have carts or something, but they would take buckets or whatever.
Big dish pans.
Dish pans, and hand them to the customers, and they'd go around and fill up the things. And then that's what the racket store.
And that's where, because I've heard you say the racket store.
The racket store was the name of the store. And then they had the 5 and dime, and then it went from that to 5 to $1. And then we joined the Ben Franklin group, a franchise with them. And then we went for 79 years.
For 79 years, the Koltermans were
Right.
involved with that store. Was it called Rupp's?
No.
Never.
Rupp's was Rupp and Company. Rupp.
Rupp. Okay.
Rupp and Company was across the building. And Don came home on my birthday one day and said, I bought a building for your birthday. And anyway, we went over and we had to sell out the things from Rope and Company. It was a hardware store.
Okay.
And I have to tell you the funniest thing, I was working in the hardware store. And they always measure chain out, you know. So this gentleman, Ted Rope, was working with me. And he said, came in one day and he said, Jean, did you sell my chain cutter? I said, I don't know, what does it look like? And he said, well, this is a clamp or kind of a pliers like. And I said, yes, I think I did. He says, how am I supposed to cut chain? I said, you're just gonna have to sell the whole thing. I didn't even know what I was selling. But we got a lot of old antique things out of that, you know.
Okay, cool. This just makes me think then, and then Marian, you started and you were over there beside, or in the same block as the Ben Franklin.
Originally,
No, they were-
we were on the east side of the square where Cattle Bank is. There were
Really? I
small
never
buildings
Mm-hmm.
knew
in-
that.
We were there the first,
first few
Oh,
years,
6 years.
5 or 6 months.
Okay, is that by what used to be called Hyman's?
yes,
Okay.
it was just to the north of Highlands.
There was a little shop there.
At
Yeah.
before,
That's
at one
their
time, it
first
had been
one.
electrical shop, an
Okay.
appliance shop.
Where was Cattle Bank then?
Well, they were across, they were on the north side of the square where Red Gallery,
Red Hat Gallery.
is.
Uh-huh.
That was the first
As
place.
late as the
That's where I worked when I was,
1970s?
that's where I worked when I was working in the bank.
And the Jones Bank was also just a door.
It was down
Yeah.
further.
Well, who knew?
You're learning all kinds of
But
history.
this is- And then you moved over to the west side of the square. So you two gals, you two were high-powered businesswomen
Oh,
in your
believe
time.
it.
I tell you, yes, we
You
were.
were, because I know that you both were so involved in the retail community. And so that side of the square was pretty strong
At that time, yeah.
Tell me some of the differences from 1970, 1965, 1970. Seward was more self-sustaining, wasn't it? People did a lot more of their necessary shopping.
Although they would go to Lincoln when they.
They
got to
still
be
went?
back. Oh, yes.
Oh, they sort
It
of.
was the bane of our life, wasn't it?
They said in 1965.
Oh, yeah,
They
yeah,
got in
yeah.
the car and went to Lincoln.
Yep.
Well, they sure did.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you just go, oh.
Yeah.
Um,
We spent our whole life trying to keep them in Seward.
Oh, that's interesting, and you did a good job, because I
Well,
will.
we had a lot of, we had like this home shoe store, you know, we had our shoe store. That was moved several times.
And you have a J.C. Penney.
Mhm.
We had a J.C. Penney, that was right, that's for the Casa and all of that. We had another men's clothing store besides Jack Graff, was Mr. Engler's
Yes.
store.
That's right.
Mhm.
He was down there where
Tom
coffee shop is now.
Engler had,
And Seward Dry Goods was certainly an institution.
Oh, yeah, that's where the
Where et cetera is.
et cetera. That was
Seward Dry Goods,
That was
okay.
the
run by the
Dom's family.
Dom's family.
Oh, okay, all right. Can you remember was the Goner store going at all that either
Oh,
of
yeah.
you can
Mhm.
remember?
Sure.
Was that the hardware store, or was that
Which one are you talking about? The one on the corner? The one on the corner of where, what would you call it?
where Taekwondo is right now?
Yeah.
Or where
No.
In Motion Exercise is?
Right, in motion exercise. That was a furniture store.
Right.
When did
And a
that,
mortuary.
Yeah. And that, you know, the furniture and mortuary was a
Was a big,
combination,
yeah.
very, very frequent at that time.
And then the mortuary, Divided Chain and Wood came in, and they were down about where you were.
Well, where my shop was.
okay.
Okay.
That was
Okay.
Chain and Woods was the mortician we had, one and only mortician we had here.
Okay.
And I always remembered I sang a lot of funerals, at that time. I could sing now if I tried. But anyway, I always remember one funeral. It was a youth, little boy. And I sang at that funeral, but you had to stand right in front of the family and sing. And that was pretty tough. I remember that one.
It was hard to do.
Yeah, the nice thing about that as a mortuary, you come into this vestibule area, and the family could go directly upstairs and sit on the balcony, so that you could look down and see, you didn't have to face everybody walking out. It was very nice.
Okay. There, okay, in the balcony, in the mortuary, which was over on the west side of, it was on Seward Street, west side. Is that where your fabric shop was? Oh, for heaven's sake.
It had the kind of cathedral
right.
windows.
Okay, okay, okay. So your friend had started this fabric shop. You actually got involved with it through giving sewing classes.
Yeah, I had no intention of going into business. I was pretty busy.
Raising your family.
family.
Yeah. And
she was a farm wife too. That's something too.
yes, yeah. That keeps you pretty busy. And so then you did decide to buy it out. Or kind of partner with her.
Lucille Davis and I were partners for probably 10 years.
Okay.
And then she lost her husband and moved to Syracuse, Nebraska.
Okay.
So I bought her share, and I was the sole proprietor. And in the meantime, we had rented the building first for 3 years, and then I bought it. And when I went to the bank to ask for a loan, they said, well, we've never made a loan like that to just a woman, but they did. They were glad to take my money.
There we go.
Always.
Sometimes they know when we're honest and they just keep on taking. They were the gift that keeps on giving.
I didn't think, there's no way I would have gotten it had not my father and my father-in-law and all been good accounts and dependable. And, yeah, so, yeah, it wasn't all.
They had a good reputation.
But you were a leader in the community, the first woman to own a business downtown.
Yeah, and the first one to be president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
When Lucille and I started going to Chamber of Commerce, my husband could always tell when I came home that I'd been at a chamber meeting because I smelled smoky. Guys all smoked.
They all smoked at
During
the
the
chamber
luncheon.
meeting.
Yes.
Well, they
forgot
smoked
that.
all over.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Smoking was common.
Yeah.
There were ashtrays in church basements,
Yeah.
weren't there?
Aren't there any?
No?
But no, it was, and it was very different, very definitely a male organization. We didn't feel very comfortable, but by George, we went.
Good for
Closed
you.
the store and went over to go to the meeting.
That's how you do. You close the store even to go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting.
I thought it was important.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then you were both always, then you were involved in running your businesses, and you became gradually pretty involved in
Well, actually, I became involved because this is the way the story went. I went up to be the fabric lady because our fabric lady had a nervous breakdown. And so I was supposed to be temporary.
Okay.
That's about as temporary as it ever got, too. So then I started working full-time, and it was fine because my husband was in the back, and I was in the front.
Okay.
And then when Clark graduated from the University of Kearney, then he came to Seward and he wanted to be in the business with us, so that's when he started. But we had so many different size stores. You know, we were right now where this long building is and it's empty, which breaks my heart. There was a little tiny store that Father Kolterman started out with, and then he bought another little section, so that made it a little bigger.
Okay.
And then we bought Roop and Company, and that made it bigger yet. And then we had a store that went on the L shape. It was an L shape, and we had a door going out this, what would it be, the west
To the east.
the east,
To the east.
going east.
What's there now, the insurance?
Insurance.
Oh, it went behind, I can vaguely remember that.
And then we closed that up again
Okay.
and started out making it bigger.
What is some of what are some of your most vivid memories in 1965, 1970, 75? When it got to the 80s, there were some hard times in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And did you do business on account? Did either one of you ever have accounts where
We
you,
had counts, but not too many.
not too many?
Yeah, we had some.
Mhm.
Usually didn't have any problem with them, but it was just more bookkeeping.
More, mhm.
And at that time, they were forming farm support groups because the farmers were having problems. And I
Mhm.
said, farm support, it's business people who need support.
Right.
And there were a group of us, and I don't know why Jean, I think she was too busy cooking. But there was a group of about 8 of us that started getting together for breakfast, and we did a lot of planning. I mean, we had style shows, we kind of pushed the promotions, and we'd eat breakfast wherever. We closed about 3 restaurants, I think, because I don't know why. Anyway, we did a lot of chamber
Right.
stuff at our, and we still get together for breakfast. Although only one of them are still in business.
Isn't that wonderful?
But it's been a nice group of people. I've enjoyed
That's
it.
a wonderful thing about that, and I didn't understand that before. That networking is just what keeps you able to do it every day.
Actually, 2 of the ladies that were there were involved in the furniture business, furniture and property. 2 were in the printing and publishing business. So, you know, we were friendly competitors.
Mhm.
We were-
That's great.
I mean,
That's-
that was the thing. My husband used to say that there's nothing more independent than an independent merchant.
Mhm.
And that's true, because a lot of times they wouldn't get together. You know, they would say,
And as retail chairman, I said it was just like trying to drive a 20-mule team, you know.
Each one going a different
You
direction.
get them
Right.
all headed in the same direction, and then, whew. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Clark, I worked with Clark a lot on
Yeah.
those promotion things.
I can remember how strong, in the 90s, how strong you all were. And it was quite something, even like in the 90s, that you folks ran your retail meetings, you had your agendas, you had your goals, you know, and you would think how to
Trying
fight
to-
this battle, yeah.
Trying to stay afloat.
Mhm, mhm. And so, if we go back even further, maybe just before you even went to work in the store, started the store, what are some of the most poignant memories that you have of downtown Seward? Is it celebrations? Is it going to the movies? Is it the churches? Is the schools?
Go ahead, Jean.
sure, you want me to go first.
You're younger.
I think the thing that, I want to go back to the 60s when we were having a lot of non-patriotic business. And the students would be, say, at the, having sit-ins at the libraries, and they would destroy books and things like that.
Here in Seward even?
No, I'm just saying as a
Oh, I
whole.
see, the worldwide,
whole.
yes, the
And
chaos.
I
and the-
remember
right.
it was when we started the, it must have been in 66, someplace in there, the 4th of July celebration. Actually, that came out of the Junior Women's Club. We were sitting there one day and saying, what can we do to improve upon the patriotism of the community? And
Because
so,
of all the
because this is
unrest
going,
in the
we wanted our
60s.
kids to be patriotic. We didn't want them to doing this. So I remember the first parade we had was down by what's now the Rock Church, and which was a high school. And we had,
Can I interject right then? Was Highway 34 as big and strong as it was?
no,
Okay.
it was there. but we had the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Campfire Girls, what have you. And they started out, and we had I remember I wore a Betsy Ross outfit, and my boys were small, you know, and so they marched downtown. They went across the highway. That's one time the police, we had about 3 policemen at that time, and they would stop the traffic, and then we marched down to Seward Street, and then marched down to the courthouse square. We had a little program, and the band, we even got the band in it. And that was probably 66, not 67, but 66, 65, someplace in there. And then everything grew out of that. And the next year, when we had 67, we had naturally, we had the centennial. And so it was a big thing at that time. And we even captured the tourist family. That was the first
You
one.
even started at that.
Oh,
year.
we went out on the highway, and I went 100 miles an hour going down the interstate, and I'm going, oh, and I don't like to go that fast at least. And we stopped the first car that said, would you like to celebrate the 4th of July? And they looked at us and they said, we don't know what you're celebrating. They were from Canada. And so we brought him in and showed him what a good time. And he was in the Air Force, I remember that. And from that time on then, you know, 68, we didn't do much. And then the 69, the kids said, come on, we're gonna have a celebration. And they always were called the Whiz Kids. And they did, they had a lot of fun. And that's how they got started in the program, but like we have it today.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how actually the 4th of July became.
As a counter movement to the nationwide, remember all
Well, they were burning people.
everything.
Yeah, everything was going on. And I remember they were even having it when the twins got to college.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to my boys, don't you ever go close to that, because that's where you get in trouble. You may be very innocent, but you can get in a lot of trouble just by being around. So, as far as I know, they never. Of course,
Sometimes
kids, you never
yeah,
know.
we're not sure, but we hope.
Yeah.
Marian, a good memory of something downtown in Seward or in the community.
Oh, when I was real little, preschool, my daddy would take me, it was before we had the milk route, he would take me in their car, and I don't know if it was a Model T or what, it was, you know, one of those grand old cars, up to the, it's over where Herpelsheimer's is, what was it called? Where you sold milk and stuff.
Oh,
Creamery.
Oh, sure.
We'd go up to the creamery, and he'd pull up to that high thing there and deliver his cans of milk.
Okay.
And me and my little dog would sit there in the front seat, and nobody would bother me if that dog was right there. So, yeah, I remember going up.
You do bring back a memory of, like before your folks had their own creamery,
Yeah.
of taking the milk. You had to get the milk to the creamery, and if you lived close enough, I suppose you had to bring it in. Otherwise, they did pick up sometimes, didn't they?
Well, we didn't, we always had to call Holiday.
You always had to bring it in.
And Vogel's, the blacksmith, was right to the
That's-
north of that. where the
Vogel's
dentist
blacksmith
dental
was-
offices.
Vogel's Blacksmith was right, you know where Herpelsheimer's is.
Mm-hmm.
Then Vogel's Blacksmith was on the north side of,
Where the dentist
Where the
office.
dentist
the
office
dentist office.
is.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
and that was a famous blacksmith place. It was something we didn't have.
Even I can remember the name Vogel. I've heard of that Vogel
Good old
blacksmith.
German.
Yeah, right, so. And Jill, I think you have a comment.
How much was the price of milk back then?
We sold milk. Ours was about 10 cents a quart. Glass bottles delivered to the door. We had a competitor that sold it for 8. And he
8
said,
cents a quart.
And ours was Holstein milk. This was Jersey milk that they sold. And they sold it for 8 cents a quart, and my dad said to him, I don't know how you can keep going at that rate. And he says, oh, Roland, don't make anything, it's just the volume that keeps me going. That was always a favorite thing, just the volume.
It's just the volume.
That's
They
kind of
just-
what our business, you know,
Yeah.
just the volume.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah.
I'm gonna ask if there's any more comments or questions.
You know, I'd like to tell you about a couple of houses in Seward.
Oh, I love.
At the foot of Third Street is a big white house that was built by Nancy's and my great-grandfather.
Okay.
And
Third and about what? Ash or
Ash is
I
what,
think it's River
a
Street.
river. Yeah.
River?
When you,
Okay.
when you go down Third Street, it stops right there. There's this big house, and it's not in good shape now, but it's a beautiful home. And my grandfather and his relatives and like that, the Olmsteds and all, built the first grist mill down there on the Blue River. And so they had this grist mill where the farmers would bring their grain in and they would grind it.
I was gonna say, explain what a grist mill is, and I didn't realize a mill was so vital to a community.
Yes, it was, and the river was there, and they dammed it and built a flume, and those big grinding stones were, and probably still are down at the park,
Could
near the
be.
swimming pool.
Okay.
But that was the beginning of Sword City Mills, which grew into a very big business.
Until it burned.
Yeah, until it burned down. Bud Davison worked there. My grandmother was the bookkeeper, and there was a thing under the railroad tracks. I'd walk home from school, go under the railroad tracks and stop and see my grandmother. And Bud Davison and my grandmother did not see eye to eye. Hard to believe.
Oh dear, okay.
Hard to believe. But anyway, and then the house just a half a block over, where Nancy lives, was built by our great-great-grandfather, Hiram
Okay.
Boyce. And Nancy lives there now. But that's a grand old house.
Yes, it is. And we might as well get it on record for posterity. Nancy, your little sister, and your other sister, Jane, took that house and with their bare hands dug out the basement
That's right.
and formed a magical kingdom.
A wonderful apartment downstairs and
Uh-huh.
2 apartments upstairs. And my very best friend, all through school, lived there, the Olmsteds. And we
Okay.
always go to school together, walk to school together, and walk home again.
Okay, all right. Can either of you remember anything about the Zimmer mansion? Has it always been apartments, or do you remember it as
Oh,
a
no.
hospital?
No, it was a hospital, wasn't it?
At one time.
At one time, it
Before
was,
that was just a home, wasn't it?
it was a home
Yeah,
first.
just
It's
yeah,
a
we're
home.
talking about where you are?
No,
No.
across from the Civic Center.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That was a beautiful home.
And the Langworthy home was where the Civic Center is, and I don't remember those
That-
homes.
That was an old,
It was a big old frame house.
frame
That
house, but it
a
was kind of,
lovely-
it seemed to me it was green. It was always, I don't know.
I knew what it was, Barry, but I was never in it.
Okay.
So, but there were some very lovely homes.
Still are, so.
Well, I want to thank you, both of you, so much for your time. This is so important, and at least we will have a lot of these memories documented, and folks are bringing me memories now too, and so we'll see what we can do with them to share. I think it's so important to get some of this down to pass on.
You know, I kind of laughed. At one time, you were probably president of the Women's Club. What's your name, Roselle, was the mayor,
Oh,
That's
yes.
a lead.
and I was president of the chamber. And they said the whole city was run by women.
Well, it was probably the best
It
job it
was.
ever was, probably.
Downhill ever since.
So, again, thank you so much.
Well,
I think it's
Almost.
darn cool. I think it's wonderful. That's why, you better turn that off, Jill. I always forget she's got. I always forget that she's got that going. And I'm just so tickled that Jill and Lori and the folks are paying attention, because like I said, it shouldn't just be me hearing this. This is important stuff.
You know, it shocks me, as maybe it does you too, to find out that we're among the poorest. It's, you know, it's,
You know, when they start calling you and saying, hey, Jean, tell us about such and such. And I'm like, oh, Lord.
yeah.
In fact, I got another project too. This is different. You don't even know. I went up to the Historical Society and I found all these pictures. And they're really nice pictures. And then there's write-ups on some of them. And the one that came up was my father-in-law, Fred Kolterman. And then but there was no write-up. Well, I had no problem with that. But there was Stan Motzke. I mean, they're wonderful pictures.
See?
And so I called Chuck and then Pete Wiggert. You remember Pete Wiggert?
Oh, yeah.
And so Gordon is still here, so I'm going to call him. And I have all these pictures, and I want to get them up in the Historical Society.
Oh, yeah, those were the pillars of our
Right.
There.
But it was so interesting. I mean, they were stuffed in a drawer, and they were getting torn. And I said, so Jean's got a new project. I called the Independent. Are you?
Yeah, it's on my list.
And I said, I need a picture. Of all people, we had the write-up and a little picture of Jesse Langworthy.
Oh, my goodness.
So I found that in the newspaper. Did you ever find?
I haven't had a chance to look yet. I will though.
I'll go down to the Civic Center and find out, but that
Okay.
dated, maybe it doesn't date it, I don't know. But it's kind of an interesting project too.
Right. Oh,
They said to me, oh, Jean, you always have a project.
well, that's this. This just started with, I thought, I bet people would like to see some of this stuff. And then it just grew and grew and grew, and it just takes you over. And pretty soon you're not getting any of your work done.
Who are you working with?
Just me. I just started doing it. Clark has been a big supporter. And now Jill. Jill's been a big supporter. And it's just kind of like a passion. Because everybody that I talked to, Marian, you would know this. I met for the first time Don Fight.
Okay.
And I didn't even know didn't know he
Yeah.
existed. Well, the man has over by Pleasantdale 240 acres of virgin prairie. And he said, you know, Pat, he said I had 280. But he took 40 of it and seeded it to all of our native grasses and has them all labeled and documented. So, oh my gosh. And
See,
so
that's what I'm in the process of having done on the home place where I'm living. We had some buildings removed,
yeah.
and we're having native grass put in there for natural habitat.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
It certainly beats the buildings that were falling down.
There you go.
No,
Oh,
think it's good.
really? Yeah. And then when poor Sharon gets drug along into a lot of this because she just happens to be there. And
Poor
morning-
Sharon. And Steve gets drug with her.
Like
It's volunteered a lot.
one morning I called her up and I said, let's go find the Oregon Trail. Come on, we got it. And we did. And that wonderful lesson, Wilma Schweitzer, welcomed us into their home and told us how that Oregon Trail, it's right on the line of their property. And so it's not me, this isn't me. This is all the folks that are sharing their stories. It's the darndest thing you ever saw.
I know.
It
I think
is.
it's fascinating, and I think it is important that it be kept. And you know, these pictures, if they aren't identified,
Right.
and something written about
Right.
it. I've ended up being the last standing man in the Fosler family and the Ramsey family, with pictures and pictures and pictures, not identified or dated.
And now we don't know, do we?
Jane did a wonderful job of getting those together.
Oh,
and
Jane was
doing
like
it.
that.
But they're more.
There's more, yeah.
Yeah, on and on. And my policy, when you come all these darling baby pictures, if they're not labeled and dated,
Well, that's what I've been doing in the wintertime,
Yeah.
is labeling pictures.
Well, that's great.
Come in.
That's great. That's great.
issue is.
Like I said,
Because the others are gonna get tossed.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and you do have to just show them.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just so glad you're working with the Historical Society. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I never had the need.
See, I always thought that our historical society, every bit was good or better than yours. We've got good stuff out there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, it's
we
been a
do.
long time since I've been out. I wanna go.
We have to come Saturday.
I noticed, I read the letter.
Good.
All right, I think, have we got about everything? Have I forgot something, Jill, Lori?
That was great.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
it's good. And Lori has, I don't know how she got, I was just telling them about it, and she's been from the very beginning. She's our videographer. Yeah.
Look at me work.
Sharon and Steve have been drug along since the very beginning, and Jill, bless her heart, is coming and has been supporting the effort now because it is, yes, I will hope that I break even. It would be nice to make $1 sometime in my life, but I'm not going to work, oh my friend.
You know what they say about being in business? You open a business and everybody comes and they bring money,
Yeah.
and then 30 years later, you go out of business and everybody comes, you're going out and it's just those years in between.
I love, and the first time she told this, she said, it's the 30 years in between that are just hell. It's true. I love that story. I love that part. So, all right, okay, we will let you go, and thank you so much. This is, thanks for your time, and, because
You know, I wonder if Pure Nebraska would be interested in any of this. I'm a big fan of Pure Nebraska.